Okay, in 1981, Oliver Stone had two movies out, JFK and The Doors. A lot of people got a lot of accolades for JFK. It was considered one of the best films of all the time. Kind of nominations, but I regard The Doors as better than JFK.
So, the thing about Oliver Stone is, love him or hate him, he's got this kind of corner market on biopics.
Yeah.
You know, so many people, that's maybe his most common denominators. You get JFK, you get The Doors, he did Nixon, he did a
screenplay for Scarface.
Yeah, and he's got this kind of corner market on these kind of larger than life characters.
Right, when you focus on one person.
Yeah, and I think that's where he does his best work, is being able to really dive into a character. And you can also criticize him though, because he doesn't necessarily stick to the real version of that character.
No.
But as I've always said, I don't go to the movies to learn about the life story. If I want to, I'll pick up a book. I'll pick up something that's specifically nonfiction, because movies are inherently fiction. No matter how truthful you want to be with it, no film is 100% true to content. And I think that's maybe something that Stone goes with as he's making movies, which doesn't always work with his subjects and the way that they're portrayed in the film. We'll kind of get into that too with today's episode on The Doors. We're stopping the time machine here in 1991, and we're talking about some of our favorite films in that year, including Oliver Stone's The Doors today. Kind of that kind of film. All right, welcome back to the show. As I said before, I'm Kyle Goethe from GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and just a couple of years ago, Val Kilmer admitted after filming The Doors, in about 3 years, he had to go to therapy to stop being Jim Morrison. In fact, the next movie he did was Batman, and he felt that Batman was comfortable to get out of being Jim Morrison because he'd be so restrained. And
that's true.
And he said, I love being Batman because it made me feel old. I couldn't hear, I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, and I was constrained. So he's like, and now I know what it's going to be like to be an old man. But yes, Val Kilmer playing Jim Morrison is one of the most convincing roles that you'll probably see in the 90s. And he didn't even get a nomination for it, which is kind of a surprise.
It's almost like he's maybe too much like Morrison, and I don't mean not from a historical perspective, but from a filmic mood perspective. He just embodied that man so much that I have never met Jim Morrison. I won't meet Jim Morrison, but that's how I feel Jim Morrison would be in public.
Right. Well, we got video of him being in concert, being animated, and Val Kilmer said he liked playing this role because he regarded Jim Morrison as an actor, not so much a performer or a writer, but actually an actor fitting a role for whatever he feel comfortable. And I have to agree. I think if you read a lot of Jim Morrison's biographies, he did have a lot of anxiety. He was very, very shy. They put that in the movie of actually doing their first concerts and first shows. He would never face them. He would have to turn around and not show their back. So I think a person who has to overcome a lot of shyness probably got picked on a lot at school, and his dad had a military background, so he was very militant in the family background, that this gets played out, and then finally you get free to do and expand and control the environment, and then it gets overhand, right?
Well, I think part of that is when he is doing. You mentioned at the beginning of the film, we see him not being able to connect with the audience because he just can't. I think that pervades a lot more of the earlier half of the movie too, because even when he's in there doing his concert work, singing in front of this large crew, he never looks straight out at them at the beginning of the film for a good amount of time. Even when he's riding around on the floor and really picking up the microphone and getting into it, he's never looking at people until he kind of is able to fall back on some of his vices in order to allow him that time. I wish we had gotten more of the childhood in the background, the relationship with the parents, because that one scene that we get at the beginning seems so incredibly important to what his life is. It's one scene that seems to have so much sway over who he is for the rest of the film. I would have liked more of it. The car and the riders in the storm opening and stuff, which is a great opening for
So it's based on a lot of the stuff that you get in the movie is based on the book called Ride the Storms, and Jim Morrison actually admitted he actually believed that somehow a Native American spirit, that he witnessed a car accident. He actually believed that spirit got into him as a kid and played out to him, and he believed that throughout his life that this soul was part of his consciousness and inside of him all the time, and that gets played out into the movie as well. Right, there's a lot of fast. This movie starts fast, and you get sped up to almost to his adulthood, which I think we could spend a little more time with that than the debauchery.
Yeah, the debauchery is something you always see.
We know it's going to come. Yeah.
It's almost like every musical biopic, the one like it's man versus the vice. You know, that is the central conflict that we always see in these musical biopics. You know, we got it with Rocket Man, we got it with Bohemian Rhapsody really recently too, where it's all just about like I can't get past this. That's an important part, but I was far more interested in the background that led to him being who he was outside of those drugs, outside of that usage. Like I said, the childhood time, we know that there was differences between who he is as a man now and who his father was. That would have been such a great thing to dive into more. And then again, too, I was incredibly connected with the UCLA portion when he's showing his
there's
experimental
actually more
films.
of that film, and Oliver Stone admitted there's a lot more to that scene, but they just cut it. It was almost like a minute, but there's supposed to be like 20 minutes of that.
Yeah, and I understood that because I think as an artist, one of the biggest things that you need to overcome is people reading your work. If you want it to be read, if you want it to not just be something you keep to yourself, if you want to, work with it, you have to get over that fact. And I think that was something I learned in college was like, I need to get over my stuff is either terrible or it's perfect. I need to learn and mold and grow. It was one of the best things I learned there. And he quits. Like he doesn't want to take on that ability to learn and get better. Right. And that's kind of the part that interests me as the vices come into play, as the drugs come into play, is that he has this tension to like not want to learn from his mistakes and grow. Exactly. And I think that would have been a really cool trajectory for the film character.
Oliver Stone obviously learned from Casablanca. When you introduce a woman, you do real good lighting, and when you get introduced to Meg Ryan, I think they intentionally borrowed the whole lighting aspects of how you get in Casablanca with Ingrid Bergman in the Casablanca. They look that glossy eye, that look. But it's from the point of view of Jim Morrison, what he thinks about her, not really probably.
When he brought, in Casablanca, there's no introduction by climbing up a tree. At least not in the cut I've seen. But
is there trees in Casablanca?
But yeah, like Meg Ryan playing kind of the big female in his life. It's an odd choice. I think it kind of works though.
Yeah.
At this point, this has always been considered to me like the outlier of Meg Ryan's career. I don't think she ever did a movie like what she did with The Doors. She always kind of swayed more towards when
she did romance movie with Andy Garcia.
But this was like completely out of nowhere, and maybe that's why this character works for her well. If you read it, doesn't feel like her.
If you read the bio, Pam always felt that she was out of place, that her time was probably a couple of years before. She always felt like she wasn't part of the 60s, and she felt that she would be a little more fitting, more comfortable in the 30s and 40s, which I think Oliver Stone, who loved Jim Morrison, read all the biographies, thought that she would put somebody that wouldn't really fit the atmosphere of the 60s, and Pam Dinkley did that.
And Meg Ryan does that. I think, again, like she stands out in the film, not in a bad way, just because we're not used to her in this role. It's kind of same with Kathleen Quinlan, who appears later on in the film as another female in Jim Morrison's life. She doesn't really, that's not what I recognize Kathleen Quinlan from doing. I think of Apollo 13 Kathleen Quinlan.
And so you have a lot of indulgences, in Jim playing the adult indulgences. But you have one of the best part of this movie is it feels like you're going to a concert. They film these wonderful concerts. Then you actually watch the real footage of like 68 and 69 concerts. It was a massive maniac problem to have the Doors come to your town. And the cops really did like surround it. It was a massive event, like what's going to happen?
Yeah. And that's where the film succeeds the most for me, is that it feels like you're watching live footage. Or like if Oliver Stone had the right film equipment at the right time in his life, and if the Doors had stayed together a little bit longer, you see that he would have done like a concert film, much like, Shine a Light or something like Stop Making Sense and those kinds of films. Like you feel like Stone would have eventually just done a concert movie. And he kind of does that here with his biopic. And again, that's why I think Stone, if you like his biopics, it's not because of their truthfulness. It's because he captures that tone, that feeling
Yeah.
that you get around the person, and not the truth.
No, everybody knows that he didn't really shout out higher at Sullivan's show. You can actually watch the real performance. He just says it and get over with. But that's a lot of problem with that happened to the Doors. They didn't really get to the superstardom because of their constant follows up. They didn't really abide to the rules of television. Jim Morrison was in legal trouble by supposedly showing his genitals on concert, so he was doing a court scene. That's why they were never invited on Woodstock. Record labels dropped them, so it's a lot of things that were going against them. There were a lot of problems, and financially, they don't really explain in the movie very well. They do a lot of the artistic qualities, but that's why they sold a lot of their rights for commercials, Light My Fire. And in fact, one of the most famous, there's a person that actually did a remake of Light My Fire that got more famous than the original. So there's a lot of things that that they show, but didn't really develop in real life.
Yeah, my favorite
Really
scenes were the ones I wanted more of.
Yeah.
That realization when he's watching the commercial and hears Light My Fire playing, and he realizes he wasn't involved in that.
Yeah.
Because it's very important to him that as a band they all have equal say. You know, that they're all together or not at all. And I think that's, for me, when we start to see Jim Morrison not crack. He's been cracking,
that was
like
the
we
start.
see him like starting to realize that he's not where he wants to be with this band.
So he blames the band, but the band says, well, where were you? That's your job too. You were being there. We all made a decision, and where were you? So there's a lot of what happens when drug addicts, they always blame the other people where they're kind of sliding their responsibilities.
Yeah, you don't feel bad that he missed out on this, because you know that like he probably had a choice. But that's, again, I wanted more of that, because that's a central conflict piece right there.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but like Oliver Stone's capable of making a long movie. This is actually fairly short by Stone standards.
Right. I think intentionally, I remember him. He wanted to make this like a 4-hour film.
Yeah. I would have watched that.
Right. Yeah.
As far as the rest of the band goes, because we got to talk about the rest of the Doors.
Yeah.
My boy Kyle MacLachlan.
He does a fantastic job.
I think he's great as Ray Manzarek.
Yep.
Ray Manzarek, who the real Ray was not a fan of the finished film. He did not really like the portrayal, and he didn't like some of the kind of the skeletons of the closet kind of getting out in a way that he didn't feel really like made sense to the band. But
Ray's not gonna like a lot of things, right?
Yeah, that's true. But movie Ray, I'm a big fan of Kyle MacLachlan in this film. He's never gotten the kind of like steady work outside of Lynch that he deserves, because Kyle MacLachlan is able to really do a lot with not a lot, because he's not in the film a ton. Every time we get him, he's impactful.
But he hides in there. You don't really know that's him.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, perfect casting leads us there. We get Kevin Dillon in the film as well.
Yeah, people forget Kevin Dillon actually was famous before Matt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then we also get Frank Whaley, who never really rose to like a household name spot, but he's done solid character acting in films like Pulp Fiction and other kind of like big name ticket names, and just never really kind of perfect there, but he's great in the role.
And if you go back and watch like behind the scenes or whatever, they actually learned how to play the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
They actually really did. Kevin Dillon went through like band drum camp.
Yeah, and I think they said something along the lines of like Kilmer learned to sing 80 different The Doors songs, knowing that he'd only actually sing like 15 of them. Yeah. And it reminded me of that story of like Johnny Depp learning Vietnamese, like heavy Vietnamese for Platoon, and then only having like 2 scenes in the whole movie. Like, I appreciate that. I don't know if I have the gall to go for that if I'm ever in a film.
But everybody, we've heard "Touch Me, Baby," and we know he's hammered.
Yeah.
When you listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in the studio recording of it, it's so blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of the cool thing too, is the blending of the actual music with the performers. It's not one way or the other. I think they said something along the lines of when it's like zoomed in, when you actually see him singing with his mouth, it's actually the actor. And then when they bring it out more and you don't have to see like the lip movements, they actually utilize more of the Doors' actual music. And I think that creates something where I'm not sure when it's one or when it's the other. And I think that's really strong to do, is because you do need that blending.
Right.
You know?
There's certain, I was want to make this almost like a dream, constantly a dream sequence. So there's a lot of soft lighting. My God, I think the light is overhead the entire time. Yeah. I think everything in the movie is overhead lighting.
Yeah, there's got to be some sunburn like under the hair pieces.
My God, yes. So it looks very dreamy, very soft until, well, when you get to the seriousness. But even when Jim Morrison's out the window and having a crisis, it's blurred.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like you're discombobulated.
Yeah. And I think cinematography by Robert Richardson, who's
really
known
good
for working with Tarantino. He did Glorious Bastards, he did Kill Bill. He knows how to pop the color, though. If you look at those films, the ones where he's worked with Tarantino, you see him being able to utilize color and lighting to fit exactly what his director's looking for. That's why Tarantino films, you can always tell what they are, not just from the dialogue, but from the visuals. Yeah. The same thing with, I think, like he captures a Oliver Stone biopic in his lighting. You know, it does feel like a dream. It does feel like, and that's something, again, Stone not being serious to the historical accuracy is able to do things like a 2-hour dream sequence movie.
But the music feels very much quality of dreamy, like hallucinogenic and very, getting outside of reality kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that's again like where he just hits that like feeling you get when you think of Jim Morrison. Yeah. That's why his films work so well. It's not the historical accuracy, it's the feeling, and everything works towards that feeling in this movie. It's like listening to an album of theirs when you watch this movie.
Right. It's
like
a
greatest hits.
It's an experience of something that not all of it really happened. Yeah. Michael Madsen, just picking a Tarantino, is that why Michael Madsen's in this?
Gosh, I have no idea. Well, so, weird thing, so Billy Idol was supposed to play the Michael Madsen role, I believe.
Really?
He got into the car accident, and that's why every time we see him, he's got either crutches, or he's sitting, or it's zoomed in. And so they moved him to a much smaller character, and then brought in Michael Madsen to play that role. So, I don't know how Madsen fit into this movie, but that it's kind of like a lucky break for him, because this was still kind of before he really broke with Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, still a couple years in the future.
Yeah, I think he was being a tow truck driver before he got the Tarantino.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think that's kind of where it really changed. Was I think this got him onto the scene, and then Reservoir Dogs helped him blow up. Kind of a lucky break in that Billy Idol breaks leg.
So I like the ending fits very well, because it's not in tone of reality kind of ending. It's almost like a dream. It enhances the whole dream experience of maybe you're seeing something that's not part of the world, but it fits into like a movie dream sequence. I like that ending fits because all the debauchery, but it makes sense to Jim Morrison's character.
Yeah, and I think that's the nice thing about the Morrison character is that we do get a fully realized version of him as a character. Yeah. Beginning to end, the ending does feel very cognizant of the journey we've been on with him. Yeah. For all the things that we say we want to see more of, we do see enough to understand him beginning, middle, and end all the way through. We just want more. But that ending really kind of epitomizes where his life has gone. And the losses he's
And I do like the mysteries of the unidentified man. What could that be? Could that be a part of his soul? Could that be a mixture or something else, or some kind of guardian?
Yeah, and the different ages that he's kind of encountering all at once. And it's very, you mentioned the film has a dreamlike quality to it. How do you end a dream? But you have to end a dream in something wholly surreal, which is what the film feels like.
Yeah, and then you get the progression of Jim Morrison as kid, concert rock and roller, shaman, and then somebody who feels like it just completely deflated, like he's tired of it.
He's ready to be done with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe the most heartbreaking element of the film, is that Jim Morrison was a unique person. Like, again, if you don't even like the Doors music, you have to acknowledge that Jim Morrison was one of the most unique,
deeply flawed, talented person.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those issues when you get the band involved, is they may not want to showcase all the scars.
Right.
And that's where Stone is really pushing for, is that if you don't care about this person as the flawed human, because we all are, how are you going to follow them for 2, or in Stone's case, sometimes 4 hours?
So overall, I think it's one of the, like we said, again, if I did a 1991 best films, this would probably be in it. I don't know if it'd be a top 10, but it's definitely one of the most memorable films. I don't think you have to be a Doors fan to appreciate it. There's some good qualities for it, but what takes away is a lot of the debauchery that comes after the end. It's not a feel-good movie at the end.
No, but I think that Stone does a great job of celebrating the good moments when we have them.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, because, we just talked about Cape Fear, which is an incredibly downer kind of a genre picture film.
Amplified,
This doesn't feel like it's a downer, even though it kind of ends as a downer. It feels like a celebration of a life.
Yeah.
Even though one that was incredibly flawed and didn't end the way that it should have, we get this celebration of a life and an artist and a unique personality in the world. And I think, again, like it's a love letter to Jim Morrison and the Doors, while not necessarily being a textbook on them.
Right. And it's almost a touch about this weird thing called reality that I think Jim Morrison had a tough time dealing with.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have a tough time dealing with it over the past year.
Especially when you see somebody make a doll of you, and you can see the reaction to him. It's like, there's a doll of me. What the heck is that? Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a weird, wild movie. I can't say that it would be in my top 10 of 91, but maybe at the end of this month we'll have to put together like what we would epitomize as our top 10 of the year.
But
because it's definitely interesting.
It was a rediscovery because after this movie, The Doors was a big hit culturally and played into a lot of the music came back and a lot of a rediscovery of The Doors that played out relatively in the mid-90s.
Yeah. But now that we know that we both enjoyed the film and I really liked rewatching it and being able to experience it again, we want to know your thoughts on The Doors, because I do think this is a movie that you may just absolutely not like, and that's okay. That's kind of the great thing about movies, is that you can absolutely hate something that we absolutely enjoy.
That's the whole point of Oliver Stone. Either you really like it or you don't.
Yeah, I don't think he's looking for the casual film goer.
No.
But definitely, I want to know what you're thinking about it. Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps us out on the YouTube algorithms and kind of gets us higher up on there.
Yeah.
And you can also subscribe, and that way you get our videos right when they get published. You don't have to wait around. You don't have to go looking for them. They're right there for you then. Other ways for you to get involved, check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/KyleNick on Film. We got the link down in the description. And that way you can get involved in picking some of the movie choices we have. We've got some cool original kind of background content that we're going to be throwing down the Patreon way soon. So look forward to more of that.
You have a tough time saying no to any movie.
I know. We probably... That's maybe the biggest problem, is that if we had the time, we would just be recording this nonstop.
Right.
And we would probably die of starvation because we'd forget to eat. But that's where you come in. Pick the movies that we're going to talk so that we don't have to figure them out, because we really want to talk movies that you guys are going to be heavily invested in as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and my God, couldn't they just do one sample piece frog in this?